Hi everybody, this is Nov. I'm going to make this video on my music course that I took on Coursera. That's the course is from Berklee College of Music, and it's called The Technology of Music Production. So I'm just going to go over some things that I learned from that course, and maybe you guys can learn something. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is propagation. Propagation is how sound waves travel through a medium, and those mediums are water, air, and metal. And the medium, temperature, and elevation can all have a changing effect on sound. Sound travels 1 mile every 5 seconds, 1 kilometer every 3 seconds, and sound travels about 350 meters per second or 1,000 feet per second. Amplitude. Amplitude is how large a sound wave is and is the measured loudness of an audio region. Some things you will find in your DAW are an oscilloscope, spectrum analyzer, and sonogram. Your oscilloscope is a representation of your amplitude. The spectrum analyzer is a representation of the frequencies in the audio. And the sonogram is a combined representation of your amplitude and frequencies. A microphone is a transducer, something that converts energy to another form of energy. Something to remember is the lower the buffer size, the less latency and the less plugins you can use. The higher the buffer size, the more latency and more plugins you can use. Use a lower buffer size in production and a higher buffer size in post-production. There are 3 stages of production in music: the pre-production process, which is songwriting and rehearsal; production, which is tracking and recording; and post-production, which is editing, mixing, and mastering. A term in music production is called, there is a term in music production called comb filtering. A comb filter is a short delays, a series of notches in the audio. So when you see comb filtering, when you use a delay or a chorus or a phaser or a flanger, they're all going to have comb filtering. They're all going to have those series of notches in the audio when you look at it in your oscilloscope. Now let's talk about filters. There is a high-pass filter, which lets high frequencies pass through and cuts the low frequencies. There is also a low-pass filter, which lets low-end frequencies pass through and cuts out high frequencies. Shelving Eq. Shelving Eq boosts or moderately cuts the high and low frequencies, but never cuts them completely out. Parametric EQ. Parametric EQ focuses on the mid-range of the frequency spectrum. There is a term called convolution reverb. A convolution reverb is a reverb that was recorded in a real space and is applied in a DAW to songs in post-production. It's like a sample and is a plugin. There are 3 types of effects in music production: delay, filter, and dynamic effects. Delay effects are your choruses, reverbs, delay, flanger, and phasers. Your filter effects are your EQ or equalization, your high-pass and low-pass filters, high and low shelving filters, and your parametric EQ. Dynamic effects. Your dynamic effects are your compressors, expanders, limiters, and noise gates. The last thing we're going to talk about is soundproofing and sound absorption. Soundproofing is when you don't allow any sound to come into your room, or you don't allow any sound to go out of your room. It's insulated. The sound is insulated. And that is what soundproofing is, when you block out noise from the outside and keep noise in on the inside in your studio. Sound absorption is when you limit the amount of reflections in your room and the amount of reverb in your room by adding foam or acoustic panels to get rid of all those unwanted reflections in your room, so you have a nice isolated booth or a nice isolated studio. So those are the main points I learned from my course, The Technology of Music Production. Thank you very much for watching and have an excellent day.